Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. I hope you are having a beautiful Monday. It's been very cloudy here, and now the sun has come out, and it is really pretty outside. And we are going to be talking about breaking the chains of anxiety and worry and reclaiming our power and wellness. And what I mean by reclaiming our power and wellness is anxiety and worry create stress, come from stress, create stress. They're all intertwined. And stress actually creates over 90% of our illness and injuries because our bodies cannot heal properly when we are worrying and in a negative space. Hey, Kimberly, so great to see you today. Thank you for joining us. And as you know, when we have challenging events happen, we're grieving or a huge job change or a big move, more of that comes into play. And we don't realize that we have more control to handle, like change some of those things. And worrying and anxiety are actually disconnections from our source, from our power source. And God, the universe, source energy is really like our power source, our healing for our cells, and it's love in all its forms from everywhere that it comes from. But it's letting it in, and we're accidentally blocking it. And when we do that, and it's a self-fulfilling prophecy because our brains are so much more powerful than we realize. So when I am worrying or I'm anxious about something, I'm feeling negative. I'm not trusting and believing. I am actually believing that it's not going to work or it's going to go poorly. And because I'm in that space and I'm not connected, it's much more likely to not go as well. Because when I am trusting and believing, then ideas come. So, like, if I'm believing it's gonna come, but I'm not in the right space, I'm connected to the place in that positive energy that brings connections to an email or an idea or someone showing up or someone giving a phone call. And when you go down that path, you're getting closer to what you were wanting. Whereas when I'm worrying, even if it happens, I don't trust it, I don't believe it, I don't respond. And the same goes for anxiety. It's paralyzing. When you're anxious or worried, you struggle to make decisions. So you're like, well, I don't know if this is right or not because you already don't believe it. And so the answers can be right in front of you, but you're not willing to accept them. So then we have to figure out, how are we going to get ourselves out of that space? Hey, Christina, thank you for joining us. So great to see you today. And so it's crazy, but that's where appreciation comes in. Also, a lot of times, especially if we're in a space where we're having a lot of anxiety, when we need to look for every positive thing, everything that is working out, because we're trying to shore up our ability to believe that it could work out for us. And we can soften our language around things that we're worrying about. If you're saying, oh, this never works out for me, oh, this is always so difficult, we need to soften that language so we can let a chance for belief to come in, right? So we say, well, is it possible that this could work out for me? Is it possible that this may not be hard? Is it possible that solutions could come? But then when something, an idea or an email or a contact, make sure you write it down. Put it in your brain, the positive thing that came, so that you can continue to work at softening that language, and you can start to say, well, you know what? This happened and that worked really well for me. And if you write it down, it helps you when you're in that space of nothing ever works out for me. Wait a minute. I have a list of everything that's worked out for me. And go to that list and remind yourself, oh, yeah, things can sometimes work out for me, because some of it comes down to a worthiness piece. We get in our own way because we don't believe we're worthy. And or we believe we've already been taught that this is going to be really hard or it's not going to go well. And then it gets complicated when we're worrying enough and stressing enough that our bodies are having illness challenges, and they can be chronic illnesses and long-term things. And honestly, some of the things that we inherit or are genetic, it's really our way of processing things that's making that happen. In other words, I've dealt with an issue long term, um, like intestinal type situation, and more than just being inherited, it's the fact that the same thing I stress about and the way I hold my stress is the way I learned from my mom. And so then I have the same symptoms and I have the same issues, but it's treatable, and I've gotten it a lot better by learning to process things differently. And I know that there's still work to do, and but it's so beautiful to have some of that happen and go, oh, okay, my body's been sick because of the way I'm processing and holding stress in, and I'm not trusting and believing. And so I'm not letting all that healing energy come in. I'm holding it. Christina said, something that's been super helpful to me is worrying is going about this going to change or have any effect on the outcome. Is worrying about this going to change or have any effect on the outcome? It helps to get my out of the worry space and into a place where I can start to reframe. I had a tough time for a while just getting out of the worry spiral, but I love yes, yes. And that's the thing. Worrying is actually, putting if we were to put bets on stuff, we're actually putting bet on it not working out, and we're increasing the odds that it's either going to be hard or difficult or not work out because we're not in the space to notice the connections, go, oh, that's how we can go there, oh. And so reframe game, yes, with changing your language so that you can let stuff in because it's us blocking it. And then, of course, we worry and have anxiety because we've had a negative outcome before, not realizing that we created the negative outcome with our thought process. And now we believe that that's how it's going to go. So, we make it really hard. We make it take a long time. We make it so much more difficult because we don't realize how powerful our thoughts and our brain are. And we don't realize that we can choose, we can learn how to choose different thoughts. Kimberly said, I had this conversation with someone this morning about my job. I need to change my feeling getting into the car to a positive feeling and mindset of manifesting what I do want my. Yes, because you got to get out ahead of it. You are exactly right. Because when we're in that space, not only is it going to go that way when we get there, but we're not attracting in something better. We're attracting in more of the space. Ugh, when you think about that, that's how powerful our minds are. Is that when we feel that way, if we were to look for a new job in that space, we're going to end up with more of the same. And that's what we don't want. So, one way to do that is to look for every positive aspect. Like if there's certain things that are really feeling to you, like whether it's your coworkers or a coworker or some specific jobs within the job, look for the things that feel better. If it's the customers, then focus, or a certain few focus on every positive aspect of the good customers, and focus on them before you go. Like get yourself feeling really good about those people and how lucky that you've had this job and you get to meet these people and you've had these incredible relationships, because when you do that you're going to start to attract more of that in. And so then your day's going to start to go better because you're focusing on the positive aspects, whatever they are. They can just be a few. If you have a huge negative and a positive, you focus and focus and focus on the positive, and you'll start to see more positive. Write them down. And when you're in a space of there's people that you have negative, you're struggling with conversations with, you do want to focus and write down the positive aspects and if there's only one, write it down and repeat it and focus on it and love on it and nurture that one positive thing until you can find a second positive thing about that person, which may take days. That's okay. And because as you start to, then what you want to do, you nurture that before you meet them, before you see them, before you go to work. Then, every time you're going to have a conversation at all, try to have that in mind. You're going to fail sometimes, and be kind to yourself when you do, but go back to that, because you'll start to change those conversations. You'll start to bring out better aspects of that person that you're having the challenging conversations with. And as you start to do that, those conversations will change. Yes, Kimberly, a lot of times writing helps us start to change our own. Writing does something to your brain to help start changing that track because we build that negative track that we've been doing in our, it's like the grooves in a record. I know you'll remember what that is. It just, your needle wants to go back to that groove. Your brain wants to go back to that groove. We got to create new ones and we want it to go to those new ones. And writing helps change that. And then it also gives you a space to go back to when you're feeling negative enough you've forgotten. Now you've written in there and you can go back and look at it and you start to have more and you start to have more and you start to change the balance and you start to have more fun. Then you find ways to have fun in your job that you're in now, which doesn't mean sometimes we think, well, if I do that, then I'm going to stay. Not necessarily, but you're looking for that feeling because that's what's going to attract in the next better option is that feeling, that love, that belief, that appreciation, and so you're nurturing all the best things so that that's what you can attract. Oh, how do you counter the negative self-talk professionally and personally? That's such a good one, Tony, and we've actually done several other lives that you can go back to, but I'm happy to talk about it here as well because it's never ending. And honestly, I now that I recognize it, it's so funny how we can do it in the littlest things. But the first thing, honestly, is appreciation and appreciation of yourself. And I actually have an appreciation journal, a free appreciation journal, which we can drop into the comments here. That's a specific way to go about appreciating. So you make sure you appreciate yourself every day, certain aspects of it. It has a whole way of doing appreciation to help you start recognizing. Because part of the problem with its negative self talk, we don't even know we're doing it. We don't know how much of the day we're doing it to actually start changing it and and making yourself actually accountable and writing down positive things about yourself every day. Then you start to hear your negative self talk, and then we start just kind of like we were talking about in terms of that conversation. You do the same thing when with yourself in terms of softening what you're saying to yourself when you catch it. Like not very long ago, I was sick for a few days, a couple of months ago, and I caught myself saying to myself, "Oh, you've just been lazy the last couple of days," and I was like, "What?" And I didn't just say what, I actually took the time to say to myself, no, you've been sick. So resting was self care, and that is not being lazy, and everything is always working out. And the thing is that when we start to let that in, oh my goodness. Tony said, I tend to be very self deprecating. In my, yes. So that's one of, actually, that's so crazy because that's something I was actually talking about today is that Tony, there is the drop for the appreciation list. And then I was talking today about how if our humor is making fun of ourselves, it's not good. It's not funny and it's not good for ourselves because it's actually being mean to ourselves and trying to we're actually allowing other people to laugh at us in a way that's not kind to ourselves. Same as, when somebody is tells a joke and it kind of makes somebody else the butt of the joke and how you kind of feel not great about that. You might kind of go, ha ha, but you don't feel good. It's the same thing when you do it to yourself. It doesn't feel good. It's like you're trying to jump the gun. You expect others to not see you well, so you do it to yourself first. But we want to use our humor in a different way. We want to be kind to ourselves, and we want to let that love in from God, the universe. And that's what we're not doing when we're talking negatively to ourselves. And so I mean, this is a huge journey for all of us. It's one of the things that disconnects us the most from all the love and the joy and the magnificence that's ours to have is we're blocking it by judging ourselves and criticizing ourselves and the not enoughness that we feel. And every single person on the planet is worthy and is enough. Christina said, I did too. I had to stop because I realized I was reinforcing negativity about myself. I didn't even realize it was affecting me for years. Same here. Absolutely same for so many years. That's why it's how to build an extraordinary life at any age because the joy is we get to choose differently and we get to realize We get to learn how to recognize that we're doing it to ourselves, and start to talk to ourselves with a nicer voice, and start to not be so hard on ourselves, and start to realize that we are more than enough, and we are magnificent, and everything we do is the best of our ability that day, which is enough. And even our days are different. Some days we feel like we're on cloud nine and rock stars, and some days our best is not the same. Maybe we don't feel good that day. Maybe we've had some emotional conversations or encounters. You know what? Your best that day is enough. And if you love yourself and you're kind to yourself through that, you will have less and less of those harder days. And there'll be moments, and you'll know how to change them. Victoria says, I love the idea of focusing on the positive and joy in things. It does attract way more. It does. It does. Um, it's so fun when you start to realize that by focusing on the positive in every aspect, the 30,000-foot view of God, the universe, is not that everything is going wrong. It's focused on all the positive and the love that's here. And when we connect to that, we can be part of the solution. When we are watching the news and feeling like the world is getting worse and we're having those conversations, we're actually part of the problem. We want to be part of the solution. We want to be part of that love and joy and magnificence. And everything we do, we get to make that choice. We just don't know that we get to make that choice. Our brains go off on all these things and we learn it when we're young. We learn it, way early on. We learn that we're not enough, that we are supposed to listen to others. We don't realize we have our own connection, and that we're not responsible for anybody else's emotions. We're only responsible for our own. And it's so fun when you start to realize, the more I come around to understanding what negative talk about anybody, myself or anyone else, how that disconnects me and how that attracts more negative into my life. I don't want to talk negatively about other people. Then I realize I don't want to talk negatively about myself. And it becomes better. You're never perfect. Suddenly you'll realize that you were at work and they're talking about a situation and you're there. And if you're listening, you're participating. And then you realize, ooh, this is negative about someone and you're like, oh, I don't want to participate, not in this way. Kimberly says, sometimes I simply need to remind myself how wonderful. Yes, yes. I look into a mirror and say, I love you. It helps me to change my attitude. Yes, I love the mirror work. I love, and really looking into your eyes, because I know when I first started doing it, wow, to look into my eyes and say, I love you, that was weird, right? And it's weird because I haven't been loving myself. I'm not now, but at the beginning of this journey, which has been years now. And but it's always worthwhile to look yourself in the eyes every morning and say, I love you. And you know what? When I'm working out now, I'm saying, I love you to my body. I'm saying, oh my gosh, I'm so proud of you. Look at what you're doing. I love what you're able to accomplish. This is so amazing, because we have a tendency to do the opposite, right? And then the workout is with such joy now for me, because I love feeling my body and feeling what it can do and that it's growing. And hey, I just started a new workout program where, like, I'm the bottom of the totem pole in terms of the cardio, and I'm like, look at myself. I've gained every time. I'm growing. I don't mind that I'm in a class of 16 and I can take a picture of the little board, and I'm the lowest one to start with, because I only have anywhere to go but up, right? And I'm not that way in every space, but I am in the cycling portion of it. But it's already changing quickly, and part of that's because I'm talking to myself differently than I used to. We fail ourselves and we fail our workout programs so much because we're not nice to ourselves about what we've already accomplished. So, yeah, be your own bestie. I know Tony has posted on her Facebook page how the progress she's made working out. That's awesome, because you should be doing that. You should be proud of what you accomplished. And if you backslide a little bit, you just give yourself love and kindness. You don't talk bad to yourself. You're not mad at yourself, and you just get back on with getting back on track with whatever it is you want to do kindly. Christina says, at least you're on the board. Yeah, they put everybody on the board, but yes, you're showing up. You're showing up for yourself. You're getting on there. It can't get better if you don't go, right? And it's so much fun. And the reason I said that is it's good to start at the beginning on stuff too, because reminding yourself what it's like to love on yourself and be kind to yourself when you're at the beginning of something new, when you are the least experienced person, or that's a good place to be. Tony says, yes, that is the hard part, forgiving myself. Yeah. And so I actually like, I feel like forgiving is, and this is something you wouldn't know because you haven't heard me speak so much, but forgiving, which is the word we're taught in society, but it's almost like saying, well, I was bad and I was wrong, but it's okay. And that's why I've kind of worked at moving away from even that word, because you're not bad, you're not wrong. You were doing the best you could in the moment. Other things seem more of a priority. Something was going on. And so instead of any judgment whatsoever, you go, I love me, and I love the fact that I've worked out and I've got this far, and I love that I am willing to go back and get back into it, and that when I see that I'm going away, I don't want to, I'm going to acknowledge that I can change that, and I'm going to choose to change that. So your whole conversation with yourself, forgiving is like we're being mean to, we almost a lot of times are, we're like, you know what, you really sucked and you shouldn't have done that, but I'm going to forgive you, right? And we want to just change that language totally and say, you know what, I thought I had other priorities. I thought this was more important, but now I see the results and I don't love the results. So I'm going to make a different choice at this point. And I'm so proud of myself because I can make a different choice. I can do that. And learning to have this language with yourself, what will also happen is it changes the way you have language around every other relationship, right? It starts with you. And so your own relationship with others. But sometimes we think that when we start to be this kind to ourselves, that we will let others walk all over us. Well, you won't, because you're actually stronger, more confident in yourself. And say, somebody's putting a guilt trip on you that they want you to do something else, and your priority is your workout, you won't feel guilty anymore, because if they're mad at you for it, they've chosen to be mad at it. You didn't make them mad. You chose what was important to you, which makes you feel good and loved inside. And how they choose to take it is their responsibility. And so you keep your boundaries because you're able to say, I love you and I would love to do something with you at a different time, but this is my priority. I'm going to my workout, or I'm whatever it is. And the other thing is, you do not have to justify yourself to anybody, because doing that sometimes takes us out of our alignment, because we start feeling like we need their approval. They have to be okay if we're going to work out. So you don't have to tell them what you're doing in order to be able to go do it. You can say, you know what, I'm not available at that time. I love you. I would love to meet with you a different time, but I'm not available at that time, especially if you think they're going to argue with you about it or think that's not important. You don't need their approval. You don't need their opinion. It doesn't matter. But it's just works much better if you're not trying to explain, and that explain is draining. Explain and drain. And you don't want to drain yourself. You want to stay trusting and believing that you're doing the right thing for you, and it's all going to work out. If you're supposed to meet with them and that's supposed to be a thing, they are going to be able to figure it out, and a different time will work. And if it's not, if maybe that's more negative energy than you realize and they're going to take personal offense, then you just let that be at peace and know that you're doing the right thing for you. And that's where all the magic starts for everything you do, right? Because part of our anxiety and worry is about what other people think. And that's the thing that takes away our power to stay in connection and love. And if I'm anxious and worried about your opinion and you give me a negative opinion, what happens next? Now I'm mad at you. None of this is useful to me being in alignment, feeling good, and having good things continue to happen in my life, right? And so when I realized that your opinion of what I'm doing doesn't matter, and that I can love you whether you're mad at me or not. I don't have to own that. Now, if I said to you, if I was very short to you and you're mad at me, I'm still not responsible for your anger, but I am responsible for what I said, so I can reframe that. But when we're explaining, what happens is we get ourselves in a position where we're frustrated because that person's not lining up. Then we're angry. Then we act out in anger. Now we feel like we have to apologize for our anger. But in all of that, we never acknowledged what was important and mattered to us and that we matter. And so we feel terrible all the way around, which perpetuates that relationship cycle that doesn't feel good. And we think it's them. We don't realize our part in it, right? And so that's the thing, is if we can own our part in how we can change anxiety and worry, and how we can start to look for the good and look for the beautiful and look for the things, every single thing that works out for you. If you're having a lot of anxiety and worry, focus on appreciation. Focus on appreciation in every aspect you can. Make it a daily practice to write that down. Because then what next comes, and Tony, this is also available on my website, but as you start to appreciate and recognize it, I have what's called the reframe game. And actually, we might can drop it on here too. It's also free, but it's teaching you how to start transitioning those thoughts, those negative thoughts that feel bad to yourself, how to start reframing them, how to use gentle words to, if you're always saying, well, I'm never able to do this, or I can't do this, or I suck at this, or those, because we talk to ourselves so mean. We would never want to talk to our kids the way we talk to ourselves. And you want to talk to yourself as kindly as you want to talk to the person you love most in the world, your children, usually, your spouse, of course, too. But sometimes we let our spouse, we dump on them in a like we dump on ourselves. And if we can learn not to do it to ourselves, we're going to be so much better not doing it to them. And our relationship just becomes more beautiful, more friendship, all the way around. Because as you focus on being kind to yourself and kind to them, you're going to draw the best out in them back to you. And even a good relationship improves tremendously as you don't beat yourself up and you start to have these kind conversations. And it's I think the reframe game is fun. I actually enjoy kind of being outside of myself, even if I have like a little mini meltdown and like going, oh, how's that working out for you? So, how long are you going to stay in this space? When are you going to say? Because I know now, I mean, because I see the results. If I'm in a space of stressing, like the other day, I had a mini meltdown because I couldn't find the lid to a pot. I took everything out of the cabinet, kind of slamming everything around, couldn't find it. when I and then I was outside of myself, making fun of myself, kind of, but not in a mean way. It's just like, how's this working out for you? And then as I stood up, took a deep breath, the lid was sitting on the counter where I'd already gotten it out. And I would have figured that out a lot sooner if I hadn't been disconnected and talking mad to myself. And so that's the beauty, is going, oh, okay. And I use real life situations because we're all human. But you have so many less things like that happen, and it gets better and better once you realize it. And once you realize that when you're in that space, it's not going to get better until you right, exactly. And that's the thing. We're all human and we're going to have those moments, but being kind to yourself. So that's then you can laugh at yourself. You don't really want to go, you don't want to tell it in a way that's unkind to you. That's the thing. If you want to make sure you tell it in a way like that you were kind to yourself, and you can look back at it and go, yes, I can see how it was amazing how fast that cabinet was reorganized after that. but um but it's, you want to be kind to yourself even when you lose it, even when you are talking, because if we're talking mean to ourselves and then we're mean to ourselves about that, we're not changing what's, how we're doing that. I do say it to myself sometimes a dozen times a day, Kimberly. Exactly. But once you start being able to say it to yourself, it does happen less often. And you find yourself noticing kind conversations with yourself. And you feel so much better. And the solutions come faster. Like, I would have seen that lid immediately if I hadn't gone off on myself, like, you know, about the organization of my cabinets, or about, the things that set me off down that path, right? And so that's the thing, is when we're in that meltdown mode, or when we're in the talking negatively yourself, or when we're, the other thing to note is if you say, I can't do this, you will not be able to do it, or it will come really hard. And so that's another reason we want to change our language around it, is because we're making everything harder for ourselves with how we're talking to ourselves, because our brains are very powerful, very powerful. And that's the thing we're not taught, that we don't know. Yes, Mr. Kramer came and joined us for the conversation. So I love you guys, and I know that you are, each and every one of you is worthy of an extraordinary life. And it starts with learning how to talk to ourselves differently, learning how to take away the anxiety and worry and replace it with beliefs and solution based thoughts, like, I know everything is always working out for me. And you say to yourself, well, it isn't. Well, if you've had a lot of anxiety, it's been hard, and that's why you want to write down everything you appreciate, right? Because you've forgotten every good thing. Trust me, there's been things that worked out, but you've forgotten them all because you keep telling yourself nothing ever works out for me, everything is hard, or this particular thing is hard. And so how you change that is a combination of the appreciation journal and the reframe game, and they are both life changing, and you are worth it. So I hope you guys have an absolutely magnificent day and week, and that you will join us next week for, another round of ways that we can learn to create our own extraordinary lives, because you guys are amazing. You are so welcome. I love you guys, and have a fantastic week.